That's Visions of Morpheus. That's their latest installment off their Waterfall album. That is entitled Ghost. It drops on May 17th. We got some other tracks coming out on May 17th as well. We'll be featuring those on future upcoming shows, so you can get a taste of what's coming down the pipe from TUNZ Records. Well, we got a great show for you tonight. We got a whole lot of stuff we're going to talk about tonight, and I think this is going to be one of those topics that's going to go on and on and on, because I've been reading a couple of articles today. We're going to talk about that tonight. We're going to talk about Kiss selling their catalog, what the implications of that are for musicians and artists across the world. What does that signal? Does it signal anything? And of course, before we get started, we got my co-host with the most from the East Coast, Sean McKenna from the podcast Barstools and Band Talk, Rim Shots with Sean.
Hola.
Hey, buddy.
I'm good. How are you?
I am good. I'm good. I'm looking forward to a great night with Michael. This should be a lot of fun, as it usually is, and we usually get into some really, really great conversations. So I'm going to open up the chat room before we head on over to Michael. Well, we got a guy here in our green room. His name is Michael Brandvold. He's a digital marketing expert. I call him a specialist. He's kind of like a surgeon when it comes to this stuff. And he's been able to figure it out and really get a good handle on it. And he's helped such artists as Kiss and Britney Spears and Ozzy Osbourne, Alan Jackson, and so many other artists to digitally market their product, their brand. So without further ado, Michael Brandvold, here he is.
Hey guys, how you doing?
Good. How are you, Michael?
Good.
Mike?
I've been referencing you a lot the last little while about some of the chats we've had about views versus engagement. And I tell you, as soon as I actually started listening to you, it all started coming together. So
I like hearing that.
Amazing how that happens, right?
Yep.
Yeah, you always drop some nuggets on this show, Mike, and we really appreciate the fact that you kind of step outside of the business sort of part of it and really just share with people, some things that resonate for you. And in doing so, I believe you're dropping nuggets of wisdom and knowledge along the way.
I'm dropping some kind of nuggets.
You're like the bunny in the Santa Claus, right?
Exactly. Are those nuggets chocolate or poop?
Yeah.
Well, I've been seeing all the pictures of you out with your daughter eating some wonderful food, so it might be the latter. We're not sure.
Yeah. It was spring break last week, so
Nice.
we did a little staycation around here.
Perfect.
San Francisco. You're right in San Francisco, right?
I'm north of San Francisco, about an hour north, and
Okay.
we went down to Santa Cruz, which is about an hour south of San Francisco.
Okay.
Santa Cruz.
And you're big into seafood. You like seafood.
Oh, love seafood. Love seafood. Crab, lobster, shrimp, octopus, you name it. Love it.
Awesome. Your camera is backwards, just so you know.
Is it? I mean, it looks fine. It looks fine. Oh, I see. The text is flipped.
Is it?
Hold on. Let's see. Mirror camera.
There you go.
There we go.
You got it there. Yeah, I was trying to read what your shirt said.
Deaf Tongue.
Deaf Tongue.
And it's the band from Bloom County cartoon. Opus and Bill the Cat. This is a flashback to like the 80s.
Your camera must have slipped. There we go. We're back in frame now. So we're going to talk about a bunch of stuff tonight. One of the things that I did say I was going to ask you tonight was about, sort of your take on this sale of the Kiss's catalog. Does that signal any? Does it signal anything?
Not in a broad sense, because Well, first, let's back up and just clarify what got sold, because there's a ton of, I guess you could say, misinformation out there.
Oh,
They didn't sell their catalog because they don't own their catalog. Universal Music owns the catalog.
Mm-hmm.
What and it was one line in the press release from Pop House Entertainment, who purchased all of this, that most of the media outlets dropped out. Pop House acquired the artist's share of the catalog and the publishing. So the catalog that Kiss owns, and this is my understanding, so don't take it for absolute fact, is from the album Sonic Boom onward, Kiss owned those recordings, the master recordings.
right.
Anybody who understands the music business, is in the business, you'll understand what a master recording is. So everything prior, like from the debut album right up to Sonic Boom, Universal Music owns that. Like most record labels,
Right.
the record label owns the master recording, and they've retained it. They didn't sell it. The Universal did not sell it.
So there was no sunset clause in the band's contract with them.
There potentially could be that we're not aware of, because again, I'm only going off of what I've known about Kiss and what this one line said. First of all, Universal Music was never mentioned anywhere
Right.
in this press release, and the press release specifically said Pop House acquired the artist's share.
Right.
And as for publishing, Kiss sold, I believe, 50% of their publishing back in 1989.
Right.
So and then they retained, I believe, 50%, and then possibly any new recordings they may have 100%. I don't know the specifics, but for anybody who's saying Kiss has sold their entire catalog and all their publishing, that's not the case. What they did primarily sell here, which might be a first, I'm not 100% sure, is they sold their name, their likeness, their logos, the makeup, their trademarks, all of that other visual to the fans, to the visual relate, like the Kiss logo sold, the makeup sold. So that makes up, my understanding, the bulk of the sale. And the press release didn't even mention a dollar figure. It said the sale price was not released. So anybody who said 300 million, I don't want to say is making it up, but they're probably making a good guesstimate. We don't know the actual amount
there, right?
That's a number. I think Forbes or somebody like that came up with that number.
Yeah, it's been thrown out there, but I mean, here's the whole thing about this. There are so many different types of ownership in terms of rights to music. So first of all, you're talking about the royalties rights associated with the master recordings, and who owns the master recordings. Did Universal completely own all of the recordings, or did the band own a share?
My understanding is Universal owns the master recordings.
Right.
Back when Kiss, and this would have been in 2000, God, what year would it have been? Whenever Sonic Boom was released, they did Sonic Boom as an exclusive deal with Walmart. And in there was a bonus disc of their greatest hits that the band re-recorded. All of their biggest hit songs, Rock and Roll All Night and Love Gun. And that had been initially redone like a year or two earlier, and it was released as a special album in Japan. They threw it in Sonic Boom. Now, it's not unheard of for especially classic artists to go back and re-record their songs. Why?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Because they now own the masters to those new recordings, and they can license those new recordings without involving the record label, without cutting the record label in on anything.
Yeah.
Prior to that, if somebody wanted to use Rock and Roll All Night in a TV commercial, they had to go to Universal and cut a deal with Universal to use those songs, because Universal, again, owned the master recording. We're not talking about the publishing. We're not talking about the songwriting. We're talking about the song as it was recorded and released on an album. Generally, and again, things have changed so much over the decades, but generally, a record label pays an artist some money to go record. That gives them ownership of that recording. It makes complete sense. If Universal gives Kiss $1 million to go record an album, Universal's going to own the songs that were recorded on that album. Now, to your point, there could be clauses in anybody's contract that sunsets, turns over, but let's just be very clear. The record labels understand that catalog of music is their gold mine. That is what sells, is the catalog.
Here's the thing, though. I mean, they had Doc on pretty early on as a manager, and when they went and signed a major contract, they're going to take a long, hard look at that down the road, because I honestly believe that they own not the rights to those masters, but they get royalties rights to those masters.
Oh, yes, they would get royalties from those masters being used, but again, that's all also dependent upon the contract. Is the band recouped? I mean, if Universal is owed in total $1 million from Kiss for anything they've done releasing new stuff, well, you don't get your royalties until the recoupment is cleared.
That's right.
Once the recoupment is cleared, then you get your royalties, because your royalties go to knocking down that recoupment. Think of the recoupment as a bank loan.
Yeah,
and they loan the artist and they loan the artist, X amount of money, and they're still, and don't take this as fact at all. I'm just using this as an example. And there's $1 million of that loan still unpaid. Well, all of the monies earned go to pay off that loan first. And then once that loan is paid off, you generally will then start seeing your royalties come in. And again, contracts can differ greatly across the board, but this is the general way it's worked in the music industry. And because Kiss has been around since the 70s, and with Universal, well, I mean, they started with Casablanca, who got bought by Mercury, who got bought by Polygram, who got bought by Universal. So, through all of those purchases, the catalog just moved to the new owner, and maybe a new deal was made. But again, if you're advanced monies, you got to pay those monies back before you get royalties.
Yeah, I mean, there's just so many things that are hidden here that none of us will ever be privy to, because the bottom line to the whole deal was that it's going to be kept private in terms of what the terms were. Because
100%, we don't know the exact terms of the sale to Pop House Entertainment. We don't know the exact terms of Kiss's contract with Universal. Those are the two big things. So everything we're talking about is just assumptions based on what we know historically.
Right.
We do know for a fact that Pop House did acquire trademarks, logos.
That's right.
The makeup designs. Now, did they acquire 100% or did they acquire 80%? We don't know that either. There's been reports that Gene and Paul still have a percentage in it. Is that percentage 10%, 20%, 50%? Did they buy 100%, but Gene and Paul are kept on as advisors and consultants? I mean, these deals can
yeah,
go a million different ways.
I could see Gene and Paul going for the highest percentage they could get off this thing. Look, we're going to give you our brand. Basically, we're handing you over our brand here, right? And you would never have this brand if we weren't going to cut this deal with you in the first place. This is newfound money for you, right? So what's it worth to you? What
Well,
percentage is it worth to you?
yeah, I mean, the reason we see a lot of major classic artists selling off, for the most part, their catalog and their publishing. Again, you can't sell your catalog unless you actually own the catalog, and you can't sell your publishing unless you have ownership of that publishing. Many bands over their careers have sold off, never retained ownership of the masters. This is why it's always advised to artists today, own your master recordings. That's the future gold for you. Keep your publishing if at all possible, but many bands might sell off their publishing at some point in their career because they need money. Somebody comes along and says, I'll give you X amount of millions of dollars for a percent of your publishing. Okay, great. Now they got an influx of cash. But when you see these large sales, it's artists who are basically in the sunset of their career. There are
Yeah,
probably very few recordings or real business they're going to be doing moving forward. And they want to, I mean, let's be honest, they want to take care of their family.
that's
So,
right.
okay, so, and we'll just use the 300 million that's been speculated and thrown around. Gene and Paul got $300 million. Well, that's a big chunk of money to make sure your family is taken care of forever, even after Gene and Paul are long gone. And
Right.
and then
I'd
it
like to
keeps
say I
the
did my part in that, Michael.
well exactly, and it keeps. I mean, if
The
we don't
gift
have to
that
go
keeps
into
on
great
giving.
detail, but when Prince passed away, remember there was a lot of legal tussle over his assets because
Definitely.
it wasn't cleaned up, it wasn't specified. Is the estate owning it? Does some other person own it? This clears that up. It either takes care of the estate and says, you don't have to worry about this. This company is now doing all of this. Maybe the estate is just kept on for advising and reviewing, but it's all cleaned up. Contracts are signed. We got $300 million that gets split, I don't know, two ways. Who knows? However that gets split, who knows what the business entity of KISS ultimately is.
And there
And
are
and it
so
and
many
it makes
different
it
revenue
comfortable and
streams
easy.
we're talking about a lot of revenue streams there.
Yeah, I mean, keep in mind the logo, the makeup, the trademarks means even without the music, this new company is going to keep making merchandise. They're the company that's now in charge of cutting merchandising deals. They can go out and license the KISS name to do merchandise. Forget about the music. Even if
Yeah.
if Universal owns that whole catalog, KISS potentially got $300 million just for the trademarks and what that trademark means to this new company, who, by the way, is the company that's manufacturing the avatars and going to do the whole avatar
Yeah.
business. But
You never
they
know
can
what the
now go
company's
do
going to be worth
t-shirts and they
someday.
can do action figures and they can do all of that stuff. So that's different than many of these other deals we've seen over the past few years, which are mainly music related. Kiss might be one of the first ones that up front sold off their IP or intellectual property, their trademarks, their brand. They sold their brand to another company.
Well, and
Yeah, and
here's the thing. Well,
yeah,
well, here's the thing, though. Over the years, all the different things, everything from pinball machines to lunch boxes to the Halloween makeup. I mean, Gene and Paul have to be to the kind of the point in their life where they're going, okay, good luck. What have we not put this logo on? That I think they're fairly confident that whatever happens, it's not going to be any, Kiss condoms, the caskets, or whatever. Can you think of anything, Michael, that
Well, I know for a fact they haven't put, and they were given the opportunity, they haven't put the logo on adult sex toys.
I think it's coming. Pardon the pun.
Again, maybe Gene and Paul remain in this deal at a sort of high level approval or advisory role, because again, nobody on this planet knows Kiss better than Gene and Paul. It's not even Doc. Gene and Paul know this inside and out. So, Pop House acquires it, and Pop House is like, well, could this work? And, Gene might go, that's a tough one. That may not work. Of course, Pop House don't have to follow their advice, but they would be foolish not to utilize Gene and Paul's input on what might work best.
Right. So integrating tonight's subject matter, to what degree, when Kiss started doing all of this marketing themselves, to what degree did networking play in that?
What do you mean networking?
Well, I mean, Gene is always out talking to people, talking deals with people. Paul and him it was no secret that him and Paul loved to negotiate deals around their product.
Sure. I mean, listen, one thing Kiss has to their advantage right now for many years is the kids in the 70s who grew up as Kiss fans are now CEOs and presidents of companies.
Right.
And what would be cooler than, I'm the president of a trading card company, and I'd love to make a set of Kiss trading cards. I was a fan. I can cut a deal. I can make it happen. So, I mean, yes, networking is always there, but Kiss has reached such a point that the deals are all coming to them. It's very, I would assume it's very rare that Gene and Paul have to go out and fish for a deal. Everything under the sun has been or is being presented to them.
Right. And to what degree do you think social media played into all that these last few years?
It just helps show prospective licensees how big Kiss is, how widespread they are, how many people out there are following them, how big that potential audience is. A company can go, okay, well, if we're going to spend $1 million on a deal, gee, how many people are in that audience that Kiss can talk to? How many tickets have they sold? How many people are on Facebook? How many people are on Instagram? How many people watch their videos? How big of an audience? I mean, and frankly, every band needs to be thinking about this, because, you book a show at your local venue, I can promise you the smart venues and the smart buyers at venues are doing just that. If I'm going to book this local band to come in and play on a Friday night and even give them $500, how big is their potential audience?
Well, and the other thing is too, when you think about say that number is $300 million, invested the right way, that $300 million could easily become $3 billion.
Sure. And again, we don't know. We just don't know the extent of the deal. Is Kiss going to potentially get a small ongoing royalty from future merchandising sales, or are they completely cut? We don't know. Nobody. The only people who know that are Gene, Paul, Doc, and Pop House.
I mean, I think one of the things that I saw where I think social media played a big role in all of this these last few years too was, like you said, prospective companies out there looking to get a piece of this would go, well, look at their reach on social media. I mean, it's already out there on social media. If we started marketing that stuff, there's already a hot market for it.
Yeah, well, exactly. Again, they're going to do their due diligence before getting into business with Kiss. Just just like a booking agent is going to do their due diligence before booking a band. They're going to go again. Could this band sell 50 tickets or could they sell 500 tickets? Let's see what the potential. There's no guarantee it'll sell, but at least it gives you, the business owner, a starting point to base a business decision on.
Right.
I know from working in business that a topic that for at least the last 10 years, probably longer, is the legacy planning. So when an owner is looking to get out and he can't find a sibling that wants to take over, he finds a way to, get the most amount for the company so that it still lives on as an entity and employs people. And this to me is classic legacy planning. I mean, like it's from what I understand, there was a dream that Gene and Paul's kids would put on the makeup, and maybe it happens, I don't know, but they're not giving any indication of that. So this is a way for it to go on that they don't have to do it themselves, right? And they still make money from it.
Again, it's yes, it's legacy planning. It's taking care of your family. It's saying, the kids don't ever have to work a day in their lives if they don't want to, because we've got, hundreds of millions of dollars beyond the money they've already got.
Right.
That, to your point, if it's handled and invested properly, you just sit back and you and your family will be taken care of long after we're gone.
It could also be the reason. Why maybe from the get-go that the record company ended up owning the masters for the recordings, because it being responsible for the masters, they're also responsible for all the distribution, right? Making sure that it's distributed all over the place, make sure it's on every platform, and even going to the point of digital. So
yeah, I again, it's become very abundantly clear in the last few years that a big portion of music sales and even streaming is catalog product, not new releases.
Right.
It's catalog. And it's, labels have always done that. I mean, we all are fans of some band who, out of the blue, the band announces a tour, and a month later, guess what? There's a greatest hits album that's just been released in conjunction with the tour. That's the label sitting here going, we own the master recordings. We can slap together greatest hits, take advantage of all the PR, the touring the band is going to do, and we'll sell some more product.
Right.
I want to pick your brain on something. Just switch gears a little bit, Michael, because it heated up the last week, 2 weeks, and that's the Guess Who situation.
I was going to bring that topic up.
Well, and I'll tell you why. So Greg Smith, who's the bass player, I know him because he used to play with Ted Nugent, and I know him because I've got a Phoenix connection. And so there was 2 shows that were canceled that basically Burton Cummings' lawyers in Canada said, if you play any of the tunes, you're going to be sued. So now it's, they're waiting to figure out if this is going to hold up in the United States. But where it sits is Burton Cummings is giving up his royalties on live performance just for these guys to not be able to do the songs, because he says they're infringing on, his life and his stories and whatever. I'd be interested to get your take on that, because, you work with a bunch of different bands. And, I'm seeing all the stuff you're doing with Foghat as an example. And they're having some success. But I'd love to get your 2 cents on this whole, I guess, phenomenon of people that are keeping bands alive and the original guys, not liking it.
Well, so first of all, tomorrow I got a recording of my Music Biz Weekly podcast, and I have got the Guess Who's booking agent coming on.
Aha.
Talk about this. But again, just my take on this. This has the potential to upend, greatly upset, turn over the entire music industry.
Agreed.
This is not, and I feel for the guys in the Guess Who, but this is much, much bigger than just Burton Cummings and the Guess Who. He's basically what he said is you the Guess Who, but it doesn't stop at the Guess Who. Can't play these songs that I own the publishing on. I have the rights to.
Right.
And what that means now is as simple as the local cover band that plays the bar on Friday nights also can't play those songs.
Uh-huh.
That means if the venue isn't aware of all of this and some band comes in and plays them, that venue could get sued by the PROs for not for allowing this to happen.
I got a few stories for you guys to bring you to a little bit of reality on this. PROs historically are not doing a good job of collecting royalties, and there are a huge majority of venues that are not compliant.
100%. There's been news stories every couple years about how one of the PROs, and you could just say whether it's ASCAP or BMI, sues a venue. Just picks Joe's Bar in the middle of North Dakota and says, you don't have a license. Because the way it works is the venue is supposed to report the set list of the show.
Yep.
That's right.
To the PRO. The PRO and the venue pays a yearly licensing fee to the PRO. And then the PRO is in charge of slicing and dicing pennies up to go to the right people.
Right.
And every once in a while, they'll decide to make an example out of somebody. You didn't have a license. You've been letting bands play for 10 years. We are suing you for $500,000. And everybody's like, why are you going after little Joe on the corner? He's just trying to help bands out. Well, we can see it all the way around here, but what's happening with the Guess Who, means that, again, nobody can play those Guess Who songs.
Well,
Not just the Guess Who, nobody.
Hang on a second. Burton owns the publishing to those. He can license whoever he wants to play those songs. Don't forget that. He controls the licensing.
Sure, he controls it. But right now, he's basically he's pulled it from everything. Right now.
And that's only on the performance rights. That is not on those royalties that he receives every time.
But he won't get any royalties because
he won't get. Nobody will be playing on the songs anymore, so he will no longer get performance royalties moving forward. He's acknowledged that he's fine with that, because my understanding is he's got a lot of other income streams, non-music related, that he's quite comfortable with.
Yeah.
So losing his royalties isn't going to destroy his livelihood. Whereas there's a lot of artists out there who their only income stream are royalties, and if they shut those royalty streams off, they're hurting themselves just as much.
Right, but there are performance rights royalties do not pay a huge amount compared to mechanical rights royalties. They pay so much more.
100%. But again, this has the ability to open up a can of worms far and wide.
No doubt about that.
Far and wide. I mean, you could sit here and go, who's the chief songwriter in Rat? They could sit down and say, guess what? Stephen Pearcy, you can't, I'm pulling the royalties. You can't play Round and Round ever again live.
Right.
Well,
how many classic bands are out there with one surviving member in the band, and maybe the estates of the other members sit here and go, fuck this. We control it through the estate. We can change it, and all of a sudden, that band can't go out and tour anymore. That band can't play the hit songs that people would come to see. Now you are hurting the band, obviously. You're hurting the booking agent. You're hurting their touring crew. You're hurting their managers. You're hurting their merchandisers. You're hurting the venues. You're hurting the people who provide beer and food and all. This could be far-reaching if it's not cleared up and settled before it starts creeping into another band going, yeah, I'm going to do this. And another band going, well, I might as well try it too. And I'll try it and I'll try it. And before you know it, it's a freaking potential rat's nest of people going, what can I do? What can I do? Who's getting the money? Who controls it?
The reality is they're the registrant with the performance rights organization. They registered the song in the first place. So they own the publishing rights to that song, even if it's with SOCAN or BMI or ASCAP or CSAC, it doesn't matter who, they still own that publishing right to that song because they registered that song. They're the registrant.
Right.
So as a registrant, you can do whatever you want with your song. It's entirely
100%,
up to you.
100%.
Anytime. The only reason that you register with a performance rights organization is to potentially get performing rights when your song goes on Sirius satellite radio, when it's played on terrestrial radio. That worked out a whole lot more back in the day when everybody was compliant. But in these days, not so many organizations are compliant in terms of paying PROs. And it's like you said, once in a while, they got to make an example of somebody and sue them.
But here's the issue, Ken. They've done they had 2 shows within 2 days of each other that were shut down because the venues got rattled. And then what happens? Right. It goes to the media, and I know Greg that's now playing bass in the Guess Who. He replaced Rudy Sarzo. Greg was pretty outspoken on there, and he didn't pull any punches. Media picks up on it. The next thing you know, man, it goes. It's like a wildfire, right? People just start pulling out because they don't want any part of it.
I'm telling you, well, I know artists who only register their songs with Library of Congress because they will not register with a PRO because they do not want the venues they play at to get charged for them to play their own music at their venue.
100%. I mean, again, you're right. If you own it, you can decide what to do with it. And this isn't whether this really, in my view, isn't about are the PROs collecting the money that they should be? Are they distributing the money they should be? Doesn't matter. By him doing this, he is shutting down the ability of anybody to play those songs, whether money's collected or not.
That's right.
He is saying you can't do that, and if I learn you did that, I could sue you for playing that.
Yeah, and and as historians are looking at this right now, they're looking at the fact that it destroys the legacy.
Well, yeah, I mean, let's keep in mind. Again, this is just my opinion as a fan. Burton Cummings is screwing his fans over. His fans just want to go out and hear these songs. If he doesn't want to play them and somebody else wants to play them, the fans are having a great time. They're remembering the Guess Who. They're loving the band. And now they can't. They can't go out and see the band play these songs anymore. And, I don't know. It's just, is that something you do to your fans? Say, well, I'm sorry, I care more about who plays than you as a fan who've supported me for decades.
Yeah, I mean that ends up becoming a bit of a hate thing towards the artist, and we can't even begin to think what's going on in his mind, right?
I think it's pretty apparent what's going on in his mind. I think
that's your external judgment. You cannot know what's really going on in the man's mind.
Have you read any of his press releases?
What's that?
Have you read any of his press releases that he's put out?
Yeah, I've read them. He's got an idea.
He's got an issue with the drummer, and he's got an issue with the bass player, and he doesn't like the way that they got the rights to the name of the band. And he tried to go back, and him and Randy Bachman tried to go back and renegotiate, and those guys didn't do it. And now he's pissed off, and this is his shot across the back.
That's why you trademark the name of your band.
Well, sure.
If you came up with it, you need to trademark it.
Yeah, but and again, if the Guess Who has the rights to the band's name, great. They have the right to go out as the Guess Who. Cut and dry. It doesn't matter what somebody else thinks. Just like it's cut and dry, he wrote the songs, he controls them. But if he doesn't permit that band with the rights to the name to play the biggest hits the fans are going to come out and see, you kind of got nothing. As a band, what are you going to do? Play a bunch of B-sides and deep tracks that nobody's going to remember? I mean, it's, this is completely new, uncharted territory again that we're getting into here,
right,
with these legacy acts, and it needs to be dealt with and resolved again before this potentially blows up and becomes a much bigger issue across the world for every artist out. Again, I mean, sit here, Molly Hatchet. Bobby Ingram owns the name Molly Hatchet. There's not a single original member of that band that's living. They're all dead. But do their estates have control over? And again, I don't know this. Do the estates have control over that band, that late band member's publishing? And does the estate sit here and finally go, "Wow, I didn't realize I could stop Molly Hatchet from playing Flirtin' with Disaster"?
Right.
Would you go see Molly Hatchet if they didn't play Flirtin' with Disaster?
Well, and you know what? That's exactly where this is going, and I hope it doesn't. But I think up in Canada, there's festivals that go on with well-known names that have little, if any, original people because they've passed on. You mentioned Rat. There's a great one, In and Out of Court. Who's Bobby Blotcher's Rat.
How many did there's Juan's got a version out right now. Steven's got a version. Bobby's wanted to do something. Warren doesn't want to do anything. Maybe Warren, and again, I don't know this. Maybe Warren owns some of the rights to some of the biggest songs, and Warren shuts them all down from going out and playing those big hits.
I mean, there's no. I mean, when you look at this whole business of who owns what, it's very, very clear that Jim Cale and Gary Peterson own the trademark, so they own the right to use the name The Guess Who.
Yep.
Right. I don't know if that includes likenesses of or thereof, whatever. I don't know how that's being interpreted, but there's also the other piece there too. So maybe there's some common ground here. One of those is that they want the rights to be able to perform the songs. Maybe Burton wants some of the trademark rights.
Oh no, you're. I mean, at the end of the day, this is probably going to become a legal negotiation between two entities. Hopefully, before it gets drawn into a lawsuit in court, that these two entities can sit here and go, "Okay, I'll give you the rights to perform these songs. You give me a percentage of the rights to the name."
Yeah,
maybe that's so. There's two versions of the Guess Who touring now, but I don't know.
You got to remember, if they own the trademark, okay. If Gary Peterson and Jim Cale own the trademark, that also means they own the licensing for things like T-shirts and merchandise and a whole bunch of other stuff, right?
Yep.
And maybe
that logo
piece, right? So maybe that's the piece that he's been missing out on, and Randy Bachman has been missing out on all these years. And maybe now here's a way for him to get a slice of that pie. Well, he's not saying that's what he wants. Maybe that's really what he's after.
Well, I'm sure, again, at the end of the day, there's something that could be negotiated that will give him what he wants to allow this to go away. Again, we can speculate what it could be, but honestly, again, I hope deeply this gets worked out quickly before we get other ex-band members going,
yeah,
I could do the same thing against the version of the band that's out here. And now all of a sudden there's 6 bands that are in this same situation. And again, that just starts spiraling. I mean, you look at all of those bands out of the 80s, the hair metal bands. Good Lord. I mean, there's 2 Great Whites. How many LA Guns? How many Rats? I mean, you got Chips Enough with Enough's Enough, and you got Donnie V out there. I mean,
Queensryche.
I mean, there's so many of these that could happen to. And then you've got even the older legacy bands that, maybe an estate sits here and goes, I want to fucking stop these guys unless they pay me a lot more money.
Right.
And yeah, and what again, you're destroying the livelihood of the band.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm basically assuming the income streams for the Guess Who have ground to a complete halt at this point in time.
Mm-hmm.
Detrimental to everybody in that band. Booking agents are not getting commissions anymore. Venues are either refunding tickets, trying to scramble to find a band. I mean, merchandising companies are like, okay, we got a bunch of t-shirts that we're going to go out on tour. Now we can't sell them. You got crew members who that might be their lively. The trickle down effect, if this gets bigger, could be significant.
Gentlemen, I think we got to be a little bit more like Bob Ross.
Bob Ross.
You know what I mean?
Or we could be like the Elf.
Yeah.
Oh, you got one too. Well, and here's the thing. The last thing I'll say on this is, like, to me, and it's just basically the press, and he's been throwing it out. Like he everything I've seen Burton Cummings do, and I mean, he's an amazing Canadian icon, right? But it's been him. He's been, making his own press and talking to people on his own. So I haven't seen any spin. But I also haven't seen any, I'm doing this for the good of music. He's doing it for himself, which is fine. He's entitled to do that. But you're right, Michael, because, I mean, like, I think, like, Autograph's in the middle of a legal battle right now.
There's another band. How many bands are there legal battles that we see where for the most part, it's a legal battle over the trademark of the name.
Yeah.
And ultimately most of those come to some resolution. Okay, you can use the name, but you have to say formally of, we can use the name, we can be the primary. There's a legal resolution that comes from the use of the trademark. This might be the first time, at least in a major way, somebody has said, okay, you can have that trademark, but I'm not going to let you play the songs the people want to hear.
There's got to be more to the story, because the Guess Who's been playing in that sort of format for like years. Like Rudy Sarzo was there, right? And all of a sudden this last year it's become a thing. There's got to be something else going on.
Well, I somebody had said somewhere, it's like the Guess Who's been, this version of the Guess Who, or has been around since like 1986. Why is he waiting 40 years to do this? Why didn't he do this back in the 80s? Now, that brings up a good question, from a legal standpoint. If you let it go that long, do you lose any real legal ability to finally decide to shut somebody down? Shouldn't you have done it 40 years ago? Sure, why did you wait this long?
And you know what? Could it be he's starting to see these deals happen and he realizes that he's not going to be able to do the same deal? Therefore, he's got to, and this is just speculation on my part, I have no inside knowledge, but, I got to think, if I've got a legacy of the Guess Who and I want to, sell and get a piece of it like Kiss has in some way, shape, or form, and I only own a small part of it.
But I mean, if he owns, he's got to, for those songs, he's got to be the majority owner, if not the sole owner of those songs. Mm-hmm. I would think that has a greater value than the touring ability of the band.
I would agree.
Again, this is why artists are always advised, don't sell off your publishing, keep your publishing, keep your masters if at all possible, because those are your gold mines in the future. If your band becomes a level of Kiss when it comes to merchandising, sure, the trademark is also extremely valuable. But there's very few bands out there that, gee, what do I want? Do I want the publishing on Round and Round, or do I want to own the Rat logo? Where's the real money coming in?
100%.
The publishing. So maybe he can sell his publishing. I don't know.
Something you just said, I mean, it's absolutely true. When artists work with our label, it's exactly that. They own the rights to their music, all the rights to their music. The publishing rights, they own the masters, they own all of the rights to it. All we do, we're just caretakers. That's all we are. We're caretakers, and we do distribution, and we get their music out in front of people. That's primarily our work.
But I can tell you, back in 1993, I was in a band that was trying to get a record deal, and we got a demo deal, and we were like, yes, we've got some money to record. And guess what? A bunch of us wound up having to work at the C&E in Toronto one summer to pay off the money that they gave us to do the demo. That's the brass tacks that people don't
I mean, that in itself is those demos you recorded, the label owns those. You couldn't take those demos and go to a different label.
Until it was paid off.
You'd have to re-record them.
Well, and even if you paid it off, but there was no provision in there for the recoupable. So if you recouped, they recouped 100% off that demo, but the deal wasn't for you to get it after they recouped their money. They could keep the master recording because they paid for it originally.
But you know what? Here's the upside. You know that game with the clown and the ball, and you knock the clown out? I got really good at emceeing that game that summer.
I mean, just as the Kiss deal is kind of breaking new ground in that they sold their trademarks and their name and their likeness, what's happening with Burton Cummings now is also breaking new ground that nobody imagined that this was ever going to happen with any band. Why would somebody do this? Again, especially because he's cutting off his ability to collect any royalties from PROs. Now, to your point, that might be next to nothing, but he still isn't going to get anything. Now, as you know, as one of our listeners said, and I've heard the same thing, he's got other business entities outside of the music business that earn him enough money to have a comfortable living. So he's probably not concerned about those little bit of royalties he might be losing. But how many of these other artists are in that position where they've got a side business that they can live off of? So many of these bands we just named off, they're only making money when they're on the road touring. That's it. If they aren't touring, they ain't making money.
And a lot of them have day jobs now.
Yeah, they have day jobs because they may not have the publishing. They're living from show to show. I won't name names. I remember a band out of the 80s that I booked, 8-9 years ago. Freaking band showed up at the venue driving a white panel van. The lead guitarist was driving the van. They humped their own gear. This was a band that in the 80s would have been like on tour with AC/DC or Aerosmith in tour buses. Now they're taking their few $1,000s for that night, sleeping at a Super 8, and off to the next show. This is such a new uncharted territory that, again, I think the longer it goes without getting resolved, the greater potential this has to become a bigger issue that impacts more and more people outside of the sphere of the Guess Who.
Right. There's a question I wanted to answer earlier. Sam Willis had a question earlier. He said, I wonder if Kiss sold the rights to their music catalog, whether they'd have to pay performance fees for playing the songs in the future. Well, the long and short of that is Kiss has to submit a set list every time they play live to their PRO. That is a legal requirement for every artist out there. They must report to their PR when they're playing their own music live and where they're playing it.
Yeah, and if you go to a show by Kiss or any big artist in an arena, and they just on the whim decide to do a cover at the end of The Who, guess what? That's got to get reported that they just played a Who song, because the PRO is going to collect money, and they're going to pay The Who some percentage because it got played.
Every time Kiss played a live show on the End of the Road tour, that's just an example, they got paid by their PRO for their performance rights, because that performance rights licensing was paid for by the venue.
Yes, that's the key thing here is whether it's a huge arena, stadium, or Joe's Bar, the venue pays the PRO's licensing fee, and the venue is on the hook. If they do not pay that fee and do not report, the venue can get fined dramatically for that. I think somewhere I saw the fine could be upwards of like $150,000 per offense, meaning per song that got played that wasn't reported.
Yeah, a venue's licensing is also based on their income. It's sliding scale. So if the venue is reporting a massive income, they're going to pay a big licensing fee every time there's someone plays at that venue.
Yep, 100%. And again, what Burton is doing here is sort of disrupting that cart that everybody's understood. This is how it goes. This is what we do. Everybody's fine with it. And he's like, yeah, but I legally have the rights to do this. So I'm going to do this. And everybody's going, yeah, but that's changing the whole sphere of our world.
But
especially in live performances.
Here's the part we'll never know, and it may never come out. And it's also the same reason why certain things weren't disclosed in the KISS deal. Okay. We don't know whether there was a period of time that this current version of the Guess Who was playing songs without those performance rights being paid.
I would say there's probably a chance of that.
I'd say there's a big chance of that.
Yeah.
I'd say there's more than a big chance of that. And maybe there was a period of time where the performance rights organization wasn't being reported by the venues where this band was playing, and Burton wasn't getting paid for those performance royalties.
And there's a decent chance that happened, but you've got to sort of, like we've always said when it comes to being paid by streaming companies, you got to follow the money trail, and that starts with who's responsible for paying the PRO to that artist. Well, that would be paying the performance royalty to the artist. Well, that'd be the PRO. So why didn't the PRO pay? Well, the venue didn't have their license fee. Okay, so let's go to, so at the, I'm sort of sitting here going, the artist, and in this case, the Guess Who, is at the bottom of this trail. It starts with the venue and the PRO, who have greater responsibility. And if they don't do their job, they're the ones, and again, we started off talking about this, how every once in a while a venue, mainly smaller ones, get made an example of by a PRO. Why, and if that was the motivation for Burton to do this, why is, and maybe it's not the motivation because this isn't what's happening.
We don't know.
Why aren't you going after your PRO and having them going after the venues who haven't been reporting that your songs have been played? Why are you taking it out on the band? That might not be his motivation at all.
No, we don't even know what we have no idea what the motivation is.
None.
And like I said, it's all speculation, just like we were speculating on what's part of the KISS deal, right?
Yep. But what we do know, I think, is if this isn't resolved quickly, this could spiral out of control and impact a lot of other artists, from big artists to the local 4 guys who get together and play a show once a month at a bar for 50 people who don't realize you can't play a Guess Who song ever again.
Yeah.
I hope it doesn't. I hope it doesn't come to that, and I hope that there's a way that everybody can see their way through this thing. I mean, it usually boils down to, some cases it boils down to the money involved. Some cases it involves other things, and we don't know what those other things might be.
Well, I just commented somewhere else online today on a totally different topic, but there's an old saying in the music business: it's not about the money, it's about the money.
Yeah, exactly.
It's, at the end of the day, it's always going to be about the money.
Well, we're at the top of the hour, and we're going to leave it right there because that was a great way to finish tonight's topic. We went down a few rabbit holes tonight. hopefully you gleaned some things from what we talked about, and got Michael's message loud and clear. Own your music, own your publishing rights, own your master recordings, or if you don't, find a way to see clear that you can.
Yeah, I mean, again, you could always buy your masters back, but if you become a successful band, the cost of buying your masters back becomes much more expensive.
No doubt about that. All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining us. Michael Brandvold, Sean McKenna from the East Coast. I'm Kenny, and you're not.